We're still waiting for a formal response to the plan from Facebook and Google. How do you expect the tech giants will handle the proposal?
That's right, Ashley. Yeah, we are still waiting to hear from them. And it is going to be very interesting how they react because, of course, we had previously seen signals from Google and Facebook in particular, that we could see them withdrawing certain of their services from Australia if this became law. Now, it has been. I guess, for want of a better word, watered down a little in the negotiation between the digital behemoths on the one side and the traditional media companies on the other will now have to take into account the value that, for instance, when something appears in a Google search and traffic is sent in the direction of the sites, the value that delivers to the sites as well. So that potentially changes the dynamic a little bit. So I suspect that until the legislation actually happens, which now it looks like will actually be next year, we may not get the final verdict from Google and Facebook on what they'll actually do. So it does feel to me like, although a lot more detail has come through this week, some of the kind of sort of end game of it has now been pushed out into next year, I think.
The code is initially limited to Google search and to Facebook newsfeed. What about other social media platforms? Why aren't these laws all encompassing?
Yeah, look, one of the sort of arguments from the government and the ACCC is what they're trying to do is create a level playing field where the giants are. So, of course, they've picked the two biggest giants. And, of course, I suppose the other thing is, a lot of what we're talking about is search traffic, referral traffic, or where that audience comes in. And if you think about just the mechanics of something like Instagram, yes, you can follow a link out of Instagram, but it's a lot more convoluted. So I suspect that's not the main game. So I think the reason they've gone for those two to start off with is literally because they've been going after the main game to start off with.
It is a world first. Do you expect other countries to follow suit? Why haven't other countries already acted on this issue?
Well, look, that's a really good point and a really good question, because it will be being watched with a lot of interest around the world. And in fact, there have been one or two, not quite exactly the same thing, but certainly experiments. So, for instance, in Europe, I think it was in Spain, if I remember rightly, there are other attempts to regulate in other ways, which saw certain services withdrawn. So, for instance, I think Google News stopped being available for a while, for instance, which of course is one of those tabs that one can go to if you're not just purely searching the kind of general Google search. So we have seen other countries try and regulate another way. At the moment in the US, we've got sort of the first noises about kind of antitrust investigations when it comes to Google. So that's another way in. We obviously saw Europe launch GDPR, which was a big kind of data regulation initiative. Oh gosh, probably about 4 years back now. So we're seeing other regulators taking other approaches in other markets, but yeah, certainly we're the first to be trying this approach, though.
Tim, the code aims to ensure that Facebook and Google can't then retaliate against media businesses or try and favour one company over another. That seems very difficult to police. Just how realistic is that?
Look, I'm not sure they necessarily would set out to favour one company because, for instance, they're getting slightly better terms in this, in this new negotiation, because we're so early into that. But of course, there's arguably not always much justice to be had in the algorithm. You'll sometimes look for a story, a news article or a story, and you'll follow that first link, and hey, you'll realise you've ended up on the Daily Mail story that was actually just a rip-off of something that had been published first by a News Corp title or a Nine title, for instance. So you already see that occurring, which I don't think is often deliberate on the part of, in this case, Google, but it is just one of those things where the algorithms are what decide the winners.
Tim Burrowes from Mumbrella, appreciate your analysis with us as always. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.